Hi, everyone. My name's Shannon, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, as well as clinical director of the Orange County campus at Akua Mind and Body. And I'm here with Lauren, who is also a licensed marriage and family therapist and the clinical director of our San Diego campus. So today on Awaken Your Soul, we'd like to talk about suicide and homicide. And a big reason why we wanted to talk about that is just because suicide is actually the second leading cause of death, next to just accidents. And so that's an epidemic.
I would love to kind of start this discussion with culture over the years and over the centuries and how it's changed and transformed. We always think about evolution as progress and growth. So why are so many of our young people committing suicide? I mean, that's kind of the ultimate way out of culture. My own research has actually been on rites of passage and initiation throughout time, and kind of comparing today's Western contemporary society, at least, to more ancient cultures and primitive societies where there was more of a village. There was more of, a homogeneous society. There would be one, monotheistic culture where everyone's worshiping the same God, going to the same school. There's a lot of the same, I'm going to take care of your child. So there is a lot of the connectedness that might not be going on as much today in today's heterogeneous society. So culture plays a huge role in the individual's mental health and well-being of their psyche. What's fascinating now is we've now been more than ever a lot more separate. A lot of children are leaving the home earlier. A lot of times we're moving away and not as connected. But we've got other ways of staying in connection with social media and all of that, which can be argued that can also be a platform for hate and ideologies that do not bring us together. If I have, a lot of early childhood trauma, or my culture doesn't help me to feel included, or I feel like I don't belong, it creates a pathway that suicide can feel like a really calming kind of answer to not feeling a part of. And so I kind of want to open up that discussion, particularly with suicide.
I want to also talk about that sense of belonging too, because I think that is why people, they're not thinking, oh, this is a way out from my stresses. Not all of them, maybe some, but it's also that no one wants me here. So the world is actually better off without me. And so that, if you think about it, is not necessarily cowardly. It's almost like martyrdom. It's almost in their mind, they think like, actually, I'm saving the world by not being here. My children are better off without me. My spouse is better off without me. And so when you think of that I don't think of coward. I think, oh my gosh, how can you think that of yourself, right? But when I say, how can you think of that? No shame, because I know why someone would think that way, because as Lauren was talking about, there's a lot of aspects of our culture that are actually dividing us, social media included, but also things that are leading to the divide are this individualistic approach to things, that we don't need other people, this less dependent on each other culture. When we don't depend on one another, then we become isolated beings, and we actually need connection just as much as we need food and water. And so when there's this felt sense that I don't belong, or I don't have connection or attachment, and I'm bad, which I talk a lot about with shame, then you're going to feel like the world is better without you. And to me, that person needs healing. I don't want that person to experience any kind of shame, because depression is real.
We're, in a society that has kind of numbed every experience of feeling more alive. If you think about it, when we were cavemen and women on the plains, I mean, we were very alive. There was predators out to get us. There was a lot of, fear. Our amygdala was always lighting up with the need to survive and the need to protect. There was an adrenaline rush probably every hour. For the most part, in first world countries, pretty safe from predators. I don't need to hunt my food. I have Postmates. So all those basic instincts for survival that over time have really helped us feel more alive are arguably not there anymore. So how do we feel more alive?
Just because you're alive and you have a pulse doesn't mean you're living. Here at Akua, we really want to get in touch with, why do you want to live? That's my first question to someone who's attempted suicide. Why are you choosing treatment? You could have gone and tried to attempt again just because it failed, but yet you're fighting still. What's that about, right? Mm-hmm. And so then we can kind of ignite that part of them that does hope.
There's a lot of shame in actually not successfully completing a suicide as well, and then talking about it. So there's nothing that actually might make someone feel more alive than having a conversation about death. And one thing also in our society, I believe, is that the conversations about death are really stigmatized. We're afraid of even getting older. And youth is kind of this worshipped commodity, is staying young. And so when we live in a society where we need to stay young forever and ignore death, then it becomes more repressed in the cultural unconscious. The conversation about why we want to live and creating more meaning and purpose in living. And I think part of that comes from giving clients here, a task to be a mentor for others, to help those that are sicker than us. There is nothing more purposeful than helping those that might need our support. And I think giving that opportunity to clients here is huge. That's why we do treatment together.
I also want to talk about prevention, right? And I want to talk about that when it comes to suicide as well as homicide. How do we know when someone is on the brink of suicide, or how do we know when someone's on the brink of homicide, right? And I think, some of the key things are they displaying any symptoms of depression? They're not sleeping, they're not eating, maybe they're overeating, oversleeping, maybe they are sad most days than not, they are tearful. You have anhedonia, which means that you have loss of interest in things that you normally would give you interest. You're withdrawing from people that you would normally hang out with. But just because someone is depressed doesn't necessarily mean that they're suicidal, right? The way that you can really see is what we call as PIMS. So whether or not someone has a plan, intent, means, with a plan. So if anyone's expressing to you like, God, I just what's the point anymore? When I hear something like that, my little suicide kind of perks up. Is this person suicidal? And I'll ask, what do you mean by that?
And the worst thing you can say to someone in that situation is oh, you have so much to live for. Yes. Because we're basically negating their feelings and their experience and their reality of the world, that they don't see a point. And so the best thing you can do is to really make that space for them to share what they're feeling and to take it seriously.
Yes. Right. When you're assessing, you're going to be asking more kind of questions to tell them a little bit more about what they mean by, I just don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to live. Then you say, well, what would you do? Do you want to kill yourself? And you could just ask it. Sometimes people are scared to ask someone, do you want to kill yourself? Because they're scared that that's going to make them want to do it. But actually, when you bring up, do you want to kill yourself? You're giving them permission to speak words that they already are thinking about. So also watch how you respond to someone if they do say that they want to kill themselves. Don't act in fear. Don't respond with anger. Try to just hear it. And if you're anxious, try to just tell yourself, I'm okay, I'm okay, I'm okay. And then assess for how would they do it. If they say, yes, I want to kill myself, say, okay, so how would you do that? And then they'll say, I just want to run in the middle of the street and have a car run over me, right? That's pretty serious. That means someone is suicidal. If someone's at that level, you want to call 911. Unless you've gone through training on how to de-escalate someone from suicidal thoughts, you are not capable of doing that.
You calling 911, that's you doing the best you can with the tools that you have.
Yes.
And the whole point of this is to help them feel connected, right? So even if most of the time, if they're sharing something with you, they want help. And how we respond is everything. You've been kind of given that, privilege to respond to that human being asking for connection and love and support, really.
Once again, I just want to reiterate that with PIMS, it's a plan, intent and means. So in that situation, they had a plan to jump in the middle of the street. They had intent. They said they wanted to kill themselves, and they had a means. There's streets and cars all over the place. So that's something that would be needing to be handled immediately. I want to speak on homicide. And when it comes to that, actually, it's been shown that most people who have caused shootings or any kind of homicide, that they were suicidal. So everything that we've been talking about is tied up with that as well. Now, the difference is someone who's homicidal is more angry at society as they're the problem, and whereas someone who's suicidal is more like, I'm the problem and I want to eradicate myself and that will help. Whereas someone who's homicidal is thinking, I'm going to actually change society by like killing off what it is that is causing the harm. You're probably thinking, how can someone do that? How can someone think that that's going to solve the problem? But when someone gets to that place where they're not connected to your prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain where you're making rational decisions, they're not making rational decisions. So I know we've talked a lot about calling 911 if someone is suicidal or homicidal. Really, it's coming to a PUA where you actually really look at more of what's going on underneath.
For those that might not be ready to go to treatment, or this might be something that you're feeling with a loved one or feeling yourself, there is a suicide hotline that you can call. If you do need help, I encourage you to reach out, call the suicide hotline, call a friend that you trust and that you respect, and really start to share these feelings, because a lot of times people won't know unless you say it out loud. Thank you guys for watching this week's episode of Awaken Your Soul. And if you enjoyed the content today, please subscribe, and we look forward to seeing you next week.